Vinland Saga Season 2 is a beautiful journey of Thorfinn reaching a greater understanding of the world around him. That being said though, a huge focus of Season 2 so far has been on the inhumane nature of slavery throughout history, to show just how unfortunate the people that end up as slaves have to be in their life, and even if the owner is somewhat reasonable, their life experience is nothing short of hell on earth. Which makes it even sadder when something as gut-wrenching as episode 18 comes out and brilliantly unveils the truths behind the relationships, showing how truly unfair and unjust the situation is. Only for some idiots on the internet to completely and utterly miss those points. Of course, being inflammatory to these people isn't the solution either. Even if I find myself in utter disbelief for the people defending this scene from Ketil, I think a majority of the divide lies in the fact that good writing of a character is being confused with his actions being justified. As for the more extreme takes on the situation, I frankly think they're too far gone on one side and nothing I can say can save them anyway. The approach I want to take in this video is more to explain why the scene hit so hard for me in the right ways and commend it for the masterful writing of the characters in it, while also acknowledging the overall message, which shows the cruel reality of someone stuck in Arneid's position. Most of this video will still be my appreciation of the episode rather than tackling the obvious contrarian viewpoints, as I choose to believe that most of you do not think that way. Some disclaimers before I start: I will be calling her Arneid as it is read in the subtitles instead of how they say it in the anime, and secondly, I will not be showing any of the more disturbing parts of the scene in the episode, as I don't want to relive those emotions, and I imagine neither do you. With that being said, let's start right at the top. I call Ketil a somewhat reasonable slave owner. He treats his slaves with respect for the most part and also lets them work on their farm to pay off their title as a slave. This is significantly better than a huge majority of the slave owners at the time, as most of them wouldn't even have the decency to treat a slave as a human being, let alone give them the opportunity to be set free. This was Vinland Saga's idea for Ketil being stuck in the wrong times. He didn't want to fight in wars, treats his slaves with some level of respect, and was opposed to harshly punishing the child we saw earlier on. Despite being named Iron Fist Ketil, we quickly learned that even that nickname was fake, and in reality Ketil was nothing but a huge coward. On top of him being denied the love of his life over the local land struggles, nothing has gone Ketil's way in his life. That being said though, it's too soon for pity just yet. Ketil is still extremely well off. He owns a ton of land and lives comfortably on his farm. Too comfortable even to be the leader of such a huge farm. The show makes it abundantly clear how incapable Ketil truly is. When faced with adversity, Ketil was never going to have the wits or cunning of someone like Thorgil to deal with it appropriately. So when Canute decides to frame Ketil and take over his farm for his own motives, it makes that much more sense that Thorgil is the only person capable of understanding the situation and make the right moves. Although I have to admit, it's just as stupid to idolize Thorgil either, because although he's smart and adept, that is exactly what facilitates him to being a bloodthirsty maniac for war. Ketil is in some ways the exact opposite of Thorgil though. Someone trying to stay as far away from trouble as he possibly can. It's this nature of his that convinces Canute to manipulate him, and it is this nature that leads him to getting overwhelmed when Thorgil kills the king's soldiers. I think it's truly a testament to the fantastic writing of Vinland Saga that makes the situation with Ketil so believable. From his perspective, as conflict avoidant as he is, he knows that he is in trouble now, that the king will not take lightly what happened to his soldiers. As the audience, we know Canute's true purpose isn't to wipe and kill everyone on Ketil's farm, but instead to use them for his own purpose. To Ketil though, he is in deep waters. In his mind, the king is coming to kill him and everyone on his farm. His back is truly against the wall and there is nothing he thinks he can do to escape this fate. This was him at the start of the episode. As he felt overwhelmed, a part of him looked around at his terrifying son Thorgil and realized that there was nobody in his life he could trust. Which makes it even worse that the news of Arneid was broken to him under these circumstances. Which is where I want to highlight another moment of fantastic character writing in the scene of the revelation. Ketil's wife, in quotation marks here, knows exactly what she's doing. As far as we understand, Ketil's marriage is purely transactional, but regardless, the fact that Ketil was sleeping with a slave wasn't going to sit right with his wife anyway. To her, it is still a matter of pride, and she knew exactly what she was hoping for when she broke the news of Arnheid escaping to Ketil. Although she probably didn't realize just how far gone Ketil was at this point to do what he did. That being said though, the instigation was definitely on purpose, and it is another example of Vinland Saga's masterful writing. Back to the matter at hand though, Ketil was overwhelmed by the situation, he felt like he had nobody to trust around him, and when he heard the news of Arnheid, he felt the betrayal of trust even further. He grew frustrated and almost beat Arnheid to death in one of the most infuriating sequences I have ever seen. I was seriously impressed with just how much of an emotional response I had to that scene, which in my mind is another instance of the sheer quality portrayed in this anime. The blow to the belly, the sound design, as a pure work of art and as a narrative one, I have nothing but pure appreciation for how well this scene was done. The gravity of the situation is perfectly conveyed by the dialogue and the sound in it. It was truly a horrifying moment as a member of the audience. At this moment, I had exactly one enemy. The signs were always there. It's an argument you can make here because it does ring true. The signs were always here of Ketil treating Arnheid as nothing more than a slave. Even if Thorfinn and Einar always had a clear way to escape their title as a slave, there was never that option open for Arnheid. Couple that with the fact that Ketil was essentially using Arnheid this entire time, there was always that inkling that she wasn't truly being treated as a human being on this farm. There was also signs that Ketil was just a coward all along. His overall lax policies on the farm, as well as his insecurities both around his sons as well as around the king, made it easy to see why he would be losing his mind over the situation at hand. When the mask of his cowardice was removed, all that remained in the scene was someone frustrated and lashing out. Not in a normal way either. Ketil was no different to any other slave owner at the time when it truly came down to it. Yes, he might have been better than a vast majority of them, but this scene proved that he was still cut from the same cloth. Even if he pretended to be progressive by freeing his slaves and had overall good actions, when it all came crashing down around him, he failed to be a good person and treated Arnheid the same way anyone else would treat their slave at the time. To Ketil, Arnheid was still an object he thought belonged to him. After all his efforts to be kind and forgiving, when the going got tough, his true nature showed beneath the cracks. It's exactly this that makes him a fantastic character in Vinland Saga, but that doesn't make his actions anywhere close to justified. Under no circumstance did Arnheid deserve what she got, nor does anyone deserve the kind of treatment she got either. It is truly a sad reality of this story that she almost gets beaten to death because the master she's been sleeping with wouldn't try to understand what transpired and decided to resort to violence as a means of punishment. As cliche as it is to bring up this line here, this is the message in this episode. I don't believe it was necessarily subtle or between the lines. This is very blatantly what the story and this episode has been about. I think this episode was a fantastic display of the true nature of Ketil and just how unfair life as a slave and especially as a woman slave is. I don't really care for the noise that is trying to say that Ketil was justified here because I don't think a person can truly believe that from a perspective of a human. I hope what I did convince you all is that this episode was truly masterful at displaying the message it wanted to portray, as well as the fact that everyone, including Ketil in the story of Vinland Saga, is written just that masterfully. Good characters are written to be believable, and as an audience we come to understand their actions through a story. But that is a completely and utterly different topic to whether their actions in the story are justified or humane. I'm sure most people understood the message of this episode, as I believe it was in no way subtle or hidden. I can only hope they appreciated the storytelling and direction as much as I did. Every episode of Vinland Saga this season has been a fantastic journey overall. Every week I'm promised quality far beyond most of the things airing in the season, and every week it manages to smash those expectations, with moments both hitting like a truck and generating hype around the story. The last episode with Thorfinn fighting Snake and Gardar's arc resolving was one of the absolute best episodes of this season yet, and this episode immediately after came out of the gate swinging with Ketil and his mental breakdown. Vinland Saga Season 2 has been the gift that keeps giving, and it has been ever since the start. There is no doubt in my mind that this is one of the best anime I will ever watch, so I am glad to have another opportunity to talk about it right now. As usual guys, I have been Lataro, a fellow Vinland Saga appreciator. Let me know your thoughts on the video down below, as well as the topics I covered. Also, like the video if you enjoyed it, subscribe to my channel if you'd like to see more of this kind of content, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Thank you for watching.